This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Wednesday, February 26th, 2025. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
The push to pass President Trump's big, beautiful budget plan.
And it's the product of months and months of work.
I'm Clayton Neville.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expected to visit the White House on Friday.
We want to be secured. We want to get that money back.
I'm John Stolnis in Washington.
A passenger jet comes within seconds of a collision with another plane in Chicago. Haya Panjwani has that. And the Trump administration's new plan to document immigrants in the country illegally.
On Wall Street, stocks are coming off a mixed day, and investors are waiting for results this afternoon from NVIDIA. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
The Supreme Court has thrown out Oklahoma inmate Richard Glossop's murder conviction and death sentence. Ed Donahue, Washington.
And it could be jailhouse rock for a woman who tried to sell Graceland. All ahead on America in the Morning. In what was a first step effort, the House narrowly passed a Republican budget resolution with last-minute help from President Trump that calls for $4.5 trillion in tax cuts and another $2 trillion in federal spending cuts over a decade. By a nearly party-line vote, 217 to 215, the way is now cleared for major elements of the president's domestic agenda and huge tax cuts. However, as correspondent Clayton Neville reports, the blueprint passed by the House is only a first step in the GOP's big, beautiful bill budget process that leaves Republicans with no margin for error and concerns on both sides of the political aisle of possible cuts to Medicaid and other programs in their efforts to send a bill to the White House.
Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson says
We do not have time to waste.
he's talking about getting President Trump's big, beautiful budget plan to the finish line.
And that one big, beautiful bill will include securing the border, restoring America's energy dominance, dismantling the deep state, growing our economy, and ensuring we don't have the largest tax increase in U.S. history.
Speaker Johnson insisted the resolution itself has no policies.
It is a framework only, and it's the product of months and months of work completed with the input of over 95% of the individual members of the Republican conference.
Democrats, though, pushing back on the plan.
This budget will make Americans sicker, poorer, and this budget will make their lives more challenging.
Congresswoman Veronica Escobar.
This budget not only doesn't help hardworking Americans, this budget will devastate hardworking Americans.
Republican Congressman Steve Scalise.
They want Washington to keep more of your money so that you don't get that money back. They want a multi-trillion-dollar tax increase. They said it during the campaign and they lost, but they still want that tax increase, so they will all vote no.
While Republicans back President Trump's plan to cut spending in Washington, some moderate members of the GOP hesitant that backing deep cuts to federal programs in this bill could impact how they're received by constituents. I'm Clayton Neville.
President Trump says that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who Trump referred to as a dictator on multiple occasions in the last week, could be coming to the White House on Friday to sign an economic partnership deal. John Stolnis has the story from Washington.
3 senior Ukrainian officials said yesterday that the U.S. and Ukraine have agreed to a framework of a broad economic deal that would include providing the U.S. access to rare earth and minerals. When asked about the deal and whether Zelensky might come to the United States this week to sign it, the president indicated he thinks Zelensky will.
I hear that. I hear that he's coming on Friday. Certainly, it's okay with me if he'd like to, and he would like to sign it together with me, and I understand that's a big deal, a very big deal.
In recent Truth Social posts and public comments over the last week, President Trump has placed the blame for starting the war on Ukraine, not Russia, who invaded its neighbor 3 years ago this week. Despite those comments, Trump said the agreement reached would go towards paying back American taxpayers who have spent over $300 billion to aid Ukraine's war effort.
So what we're doing is now we're saying, look, we want to be secured. We want to get that money back. We're helping a country through a very, very big problem, a problem like very few people have had. Shouldn't have had this problem because it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen. So we have to straighten it out. But the American taxpayer now is going to get their money back plus.
One of the Ukrainian officials said the agreement could allow the two leaders to talk about continued American military aid to Ukraine. At a news conference yesterday, House Speaker Mike Johnson was asked about Trump's recent comments about Zelensky.
Everybody in the world wants an end to this war. We need to restore peace there. President Trump is fiercely committed to that. Now, he operates in a certain way. He is a great deal maker, as everyone will have to acknowledge, whether they like it or not. He wrote the book, The Art of the Deal, right?
Democratic Congressman Mike Swazi telling reporters the president has it all wrong.
Putin is a dictator. Zelensky is not. Zelensky was elected by 73% of the voters in Ukraine, an election that was certified by the European Commission that certifies it was, in fact, a free and fair election.
Trump said this could be a $1 trillion deal the U.S. will sign, likely with Zelensky at the White House on Friday. John Stolnis, Washington.
New migrant registration plan. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. Wednesday weather on America in the Morning. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
The one main feature moving across the United States today is going to start the day around northern Iowa and southern Minnesota and then shift eastward through the southern Great Lakes before reaching the southwest Michigan and northern Indiana late today and then moving into western New York late tonight. This system is going to have an area of rain through southeast Minnesota that will carry eastward through southern Wisconsin and southern Michigan, but not too far to the north. There'll be enough cold air in place to mix with some snow through the northern parts of each state and even plain snow in the upper peninsula of Michigan. Farther south, the weak cold front associated with this storm will yield a few showers as far south as Kansas early this morning, and then into Missouri and Illinois, and then finally moving into Ohio and northern Kentucky this afternoon. There could even be a rumble of thunder. And this will continue to build south and east tonight, reaching as far south as northeast Texas with a thunderstorm and snow as far north as northern Maine. Other than a few showers along the east coast of Florida and a few snow showers in the Rockies and Northeast, the rest of the nation will be largely dry today. Many of the plain states will see a drop in temperature this afternoon compared to yesterday, but these areas will still range 5 to 15 degrees above the historical average, with highs in the 30s and 40s across North Dakota into Minnesota, and then warming into the 50s and 60s through the central states, and even 80s in parts of South Texas. That above average warmth will translate into the Tennessee Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and Southeast, with 60s and 70s for most, and a few 80-degree readings in Florida. That's the weather across America. Detroit, Michigan will have plenty of clouds today with some rain later in the morning into the afternoon with a high of 42. El Paso, Texas will be warmer with plenty of sunshine and a high around 80. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Near catastrophe at Chicago's Midway Airport when a commuter jet had to abort their landing at the last second to avoid another plane on the ground. Correspondent Haya Panjwani reports.
Pilots on a Southwest Airlines flight attempting to land at Chicago's Midway Airport were forced to make the plane climb suddenly to avoid another aircraft crossing the runway.
Southwest 2504 going around.
2504, roger that, maintain 3000.
Airport webcam video shows Southwest Flight 2504 appeared to briefly touch down before its nose was abruptly pulled up as the second plane is seen on the runway. Audio recording of communication between the crew and air traffic control captures the pilot asking,
Tower Southwest 2504, how'd that happen?
The flight safely landed after the crew performed a precautionary go-around to avoid a possible conflict with another aircraft that entered the runway. The Federal Aviation Administration says the second plane, a business jet, entered the runway without authorization. The National Transportation Safety Board is looking into it. Audio courtesy of liveatc.net. I'm Haya Panjwani.
In yet another incident, a United Airlines 757 had to immediately return to Newark Airport after reporting an engine issue. It was Monday that a Delta flight was forced to turn back to Atlanta after a smoky haze filled the cabin. This a week after two small planes hit each other in midair over Arizona and a Delta jet flipped over while landing in Toronto. America in the Morning continues. The Department of Homeland Security announced that it plans to make undocumented immigrants age 14 or older in the United States register and provide their fingerprints to the U.S. government or potentially face criminal prosecution. In a Fox News interview, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said the migrant registry plan was part of an effort to, quote, use every single tool at our disposal to do exactly what President Trump promised the American people, end quote. Migrants who do not register could face criminal or civil penalties, including fines, and the Trump administration says it's simply enforcing existing law that had been ignored until now. When we return on America in the Morning, a look at consumer confidence data after these messages. This is America in the Morning. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, always putting clients' interests first. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger with the Wednesday edition.
Wall Street opens this morning after a mixed day yesterday for stocks. February consumer confidence, it came in worse than expected, and it's the latest sign of a slowing U.S. economy. The Dow was up 150 points. The Nasdaq plunged 260. Investors are bracing for quarterly results this afternoon from NVIDIA. While Tesla CEO Elon Musk is busy in Washington, his Tesla company has fallen out of the $1 trillion market cap club, and Tesla has lost a third of its value just since its record close on December 17th. Trump Media, its shares had their worst day in nearly a month yesterday. The company has lost 40% of its value since Donald Trump took office. The latest sign of a slowing economy is the February consumer confidence data, worse than expected.
Headline confidence coming in at 98.3. We're expecting a number over 102. That's February from the Conference Board, significantly lower, and it is the lightest level going back to June of last year.
CNBC's Rick Santelli. Investors bracing for NVIDIA's quarterly results after the closing bell this afternoon. It's a biggie because it can move markets.
If you think about how monumental this stock is in terms of its size in the S&P, its size in the NASDAQ, how meaningful its commentary is for the share prices of the next 50 largest companies, it's definitely a big event. Some would call it a potentially market clearing event.
Ritholtz Wealth's Josh Brown on CNBC. If President Trump's tariffs take effect next week, the people of Montana will hurt the worst. 94% of all of the imports into Montana come from China, Canada, or Mexico. A CNBC analysis of states and their imports found that New Mexico will be hurt second, Vermont third. The full story at CNBC.com. Disney testing dynamic pricing in Paris that it could bring to Disneyland and Disney World in the U.S. as soon as this year. Taking a page out of the airline and hotel pricing playbook, you never know what the other guy paid.
There is no actual price of a ticket to get in the park. You log on, you click buy a ticket, and for the next 60 minutes, your price is locked, whether you're buying it for tomorrow or 6 months out.
Lightshed's Rich Greenfield on CNBC.
You come back in an hour, that price could be different. It's all based on supply and demand. It gives Disney, obviously, a lot of flexibility for the consumer. You don't see the price increases the same way. You know, Disney's on this annual cycle where we all talk about, oh, the price of the parks is going up by blank.
On today's watch list, it's all about NVIDIA's earnings after the bell. We get newly built home sales numbers for January. Amazon is relaunching Alexa with AI.
Stay tuned, right? CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. When we return on America in the Morning, the seller of one of America's most iconic homes wasn't the seller at all after these messages. This is America in the Morning. The Supreme Court has thrown out a death sentence case in Oklahoma, one that both legal sides were in favor of. Correspondent Ed Donahue reports.
The Supreme Court has thrown out Oklahoma inmate Richard Glossop's murder conviction and death sentence. Glossop was convicted and sentenced to death in the 1997 killing in Oklahoma City of his former boss, motel owner Barry Van Treese. Prosecutors say it was a murder-for-hire scheme. The justices heard arguments in October, and both lawyers for Glossop and the state argue the conviction and death sentence should be overturned because he did not get a fair trial. Glossop has always maintained his innocence. His wife, Leah Roger, told the AP in 2022, Glossop has survived execution before.
The one thing he's really taken away from that is don't take anything for granted. Don't leave things undone, unsaid. Don't count on there being a tomorrow. Really live in the moment.
The justices found prosecutors did not turn over evidence that might have bolstered Glossop's defense. The victims' relatives told the High Court they want to see Glossop executed. Ed Donahue, Washington.
A Missouri woman is in big trouble with the law and could soon be singing Jailhouse Rock, admitting to a scheme of trying to auction off Graceland. Correspondent Donna Warder explains.
Lisa Janine Finley is pleading guilty in federal court in Memphis to concocting a scheme to defraud Elvis Presley's family out of his Graceland mansion. Prosecutors say the Missouri woman claimed that Lisa Marie Presley borrowed $3.8 million from a bogus private lender and pledged Graceland as collateral for the loan before she died in January 2023. Prosecutors say Finley threatened to sell Graceland to the highest bidder if Elvis's family didn't pay a $2.85 million settlement. Finley even published a fake foreclosure notice in a Memphis newspaper announcing the auction of Graceland in May 2024. A judge stopped the sale after Lisa Marie's daughter sued. Finley is pleading guilty to mail fraud and will be sentenced at a later date. I'm Donna Warder.
America in the Morning for Wednesday, February 26, 2025, is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour,
federal workers already in turmoil may face more demands to justify their work. Sagar Magani, Washington.
President Trump floating the idea of another path to citizenship. I'm Clayton Neville.
Bronx residents angry over a new migrant shelter in their backyard. I'm Bob Brown. That story next.
A federal judge has given the Trump administration less than 2 days to release billions of dollars in U.S. foreign aid. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Some states are welcoming recently laid off federal workers to apply for local jobs. I'm Julie Walker.
Suits LA gets a slow start as a streaming spin-off hopeful. I'm Kevin Carr.
Back after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Thanks for listening. The calendar still says winter, but a sure sign of spring as we check in with AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Most areas across the entire U.S. will have above average warmth today, except maybe near the central Rockies, where it will be a little bit closer to the historical average. In the Plains states, there will be a drop in temperatures this afternoon as compared to yesterday, but these areas will still range from 5 to 15 degrees above the historical average, with highs in the 30s and 40s across North Dakota into Minnesota, and then warming into the 50s and 60s through the central states, and then even 80s in parts of South Texas. That above average warmth will again translate into the Tennessee Valley, Middle Atlantic, and Southeast, with 60s and 70s for most, and a few 80-degree readings in Florida. Even in the Northeast, with highs in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, it will still be quite a bit above average. The western states will remain dry today with a decent amount of sunshine. Temperatures will be largely above average, with the Southwest having highs in the 80s and low 90s, and some records there could be challenged. The one main feature moving across the U.S. today is going to start in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota and then shift eastward through the southern Great Lakes and then eventually reaching into western New York by late tonight. This system is going to have an area of rain through southeast Minnesota that will carry eastward through southern Wisconsin and southern Michigan, but not too far to the north. There'll be enough cold air in place for snow to mix in through the northern parts of each of those states and even plain snow in parts of the upper peninsula of Michigan. Farther south, there'll be a weak cold front associated with the system, producing a few showers from eastern Kansas early this morning and then continuing into Missouri and Illinois and then finally moving into Ohio and northern Kentucky this afternoon, and there could even be a rumble of thunder. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
You can follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. The Department of Government Efficiency continues to come under scrutiny as more federal jobs are being purged to cut costs. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports this comes after a surprise announcement of a mass technology resignation at DOJ.
At Musk's urging, the federal government's Human Resources Agency sent an email over the weekend telling workers to list approximately 5 bullet points of what they did last week. The office told agency leaders employees did not have to respond. Hours later, it said there may be more requests going forward, and workers might be sanctioned for not responding.
We've had more than 1 million workers who have chosen to participate,
which is less than half the estimated federal workforce.
We advise federal workers, unless your agency has dictated you not to respond to this email. I actually participated in myself.
White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt, Musk has become the president's most powerful advisor, and Leavitt says he will take part this week in the president's first cabinet meeting.
By asking the question, tell us what you did this week, what he's doing is saying, are you actually working? And then if you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired, because a lot of people are not answering because they don't even exist.
More than 20 federal employees have resigned from Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency over concerns about what Musk is trying to accomplish. In a joint resignation letter, 21 federal technology staffers say they refuse to use their technical expertise to dismantle critical public services or legitimize DOJ's actions. They include engineers, data scientists, and product managers.
The agency heads will determine the best practices for their employees at their specific agencies. Again, this was an idea that Elon come up with. DOJ worked with OPM to actually implement the idea.
The mass resignation comes as DOJ's efforts face a flurry of legal challenges. Even so, President Trump says he backs Musk. And earlier today,
you ought to be standing up and applauding that, and we all do.
House Speaker Mike Johnson says Musk's team is doing what Congress has failed to do for years, slash the government. But the Trump administration's own data shows nearly 40% of the federal contracts DOJ claims to have canceled are not expected to save the government any money. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
Following questions that were raised as to exactly who's running the Department of Government Efficiency, the White House reported last night that Amy Gleason is the DOJ acting administrator. Fox News reports that Gleason's background is in healthcare technology and worked for the United States Digital Service during the previous Trump administration on the federal response to the coronavirus pandemic. The Trump administration vows more changes to immigration policies as the president introduces a new path to citizenship. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
President Trump in the Oval Office in front of reporters floated the possibility of replacing the current EB-5 program with a gold card.
You have a green card. This is a gold card.
The card would cost about $5 million.
And that's going to give you green card privileges plus. It's going to be a route to citizenship. And wealthy people will be coming into our country by buying this card. They'll be wealthy, and they'll be successful, and they'll be spending a lot of money and paying a lot of taxes and employing a lot of people.
The EB-5 program grants green cards to foreigners promising to invest in U.S. business. Trump says his plan is beneficial for foreigners, American companies, and America as a whole, and he insists the gold cards would help America cut into its deficit.
Apple and all these companies that want to get people to be working for them will be able to buy a card.
This is a federal judge in Seattle blocked President Trump's recent effort to suspend the refugee admissions program. The judge noted that the president's authority is, quote, not limitless. I'm Clayton Neville.
24 hours after New York City Mayor Eric Adams announced he was going to close a large Midtown Manhattan hotel that was turned into the city's largest migrant shelter and processing center, nearby residents in a Bronx neighborhood are outraged that an unused warehouse is going to be turned into a more than 2,000-man migrant housing complex. Bob Brown has the story.
Residents of a South Bronx community say they were blindsided by the administration's decision to open a male-only migrant shelter and a warehouse in their neighborhood, which will house over 2,000 migrant men. This all coming on the heels of Mayor Eric Adams' recent announcement to close the Roosevelt Hotel in Midtown Manhattan, which has housed migrants and their families since 2023.
We are announcing the Roosevelt Hotel, which served as both our asylum arrival center and the Humanitarian Emergency Response and Relief Center for nearly 2 years, will be closing in the coming months.
Fox 5 New York City at a community board meeting where angry residents saying the worst part is they had no say in the decision.
And you give them hotels, and you give them some events, but yet you still people dirty streets. That's so right. Please, I'm tired of you going. Don't tell me how to say it. I'm living it. I'm seeing it. I'm feeling it. I'm loving it.
We feel like it's a dumping ground. We get into jail right across the street, and now we're going to get a 2,200 bed for homeless men? No. Think about women and families first.
There were reportedly plans to turn the warehouse into a manufacturing site, which would create thousands of jobs. The Bronx shelter is already accepting new arrivals. Bob Brown, New York.
When we return on America in the Morning, NFL coach arrested. And don't get cozy with this cozy bear. Just a couple stories you'll hear next when America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. I'm John Trout. Just a day after President Trump announced he would initiate 25% tariffs on products coming into the U.S. from Canada and Mexico in March, the White House now says those tariffs are still pending negotiations. Barron's is reporting that the process for reciprocal tariffs is moving forward on schedule. There will be first talks between the U.S. and Canada and Mexico as to how and when they'll begin. Mexico's president told Reuters that talks were ongoing with the Trump administration, but they have a plan B standing by if those talks fail. Canadian officials previously stated that they will implement what they described as a suite of retaliatory tariffs targeting Republican-leaning states if the U.S. imposes any new tariffs. In response, Donald Trump has promised to escalate the tariffs if Canada were to respond. A federal judge has ruled in a case brought against the Trump administration regarding billions in foreign aid. Lisa Dwyer reports the judge also put a time limit on his order.
A federal judge has given the Trump administration less than 2 days to release billions of dollars in U.S. foreign aid. The judge says the administration has given no sign of complying with his nearly 2-week-old court order to ease its funding freeze. It's the second time a judge has found that the Trump administration has not followed a court order. The nonprofits involved in the lawsuit say that the administration has stiffed them on billions of dollars in money already owed. The cutoff followed an executive order by President Donald Trump targeting what he says are wasteful programs that do not correspond to his foreign policy goals. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Some states are trying to take advantage of skilled people who were laid off by federal job cuts. Correspondent Julie Walker reports on what New York is offering to get recently fired federal workers to think about jobs in the Empire State.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul promoting an online portal.
The federal government might say you're fired, but here in New York, we say you're hired. In fact, we love federal workers. Whatever your skills, we value public service.
Hochul did not make clear if federal workers would get a leg up, but Hawaii says it has an expedited hiring process, fast-tracking qualified candidates laid off from federal jobs or cut because of a loss of federal funding. And New Mexico says it has a dedicated resource page to connect federal workers who lost their jobs with immediate opportunities. I'm Julie Walker.
A long-running chain of craft stores is shutting down for good. Correspondent Jennifer King has the story.
Joann Inc., a fabric and craft retailer that's been in business for more than 80 years, is going out of business and shuttering all locations in 49 states. That includes stores that dodged an earlier round of closings. The company cited sluggish consumer demand and inventory shortages. In January, the Ohio-based retailer filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy for the second time in a year. Financial services company GA Group, along with Joann's lenders, were selected as the winning bidders in an auction to acquire the company's assets and will begin winding down operations. The company says their website, Joann.com, and the mobile app will stay open as they conduct going-out-of-business sales. The stores were beloved by crafters, knitters, and parents looking for last-minute supplies for school projects. I'm Jennifer King.
A pro football coach for the Denver Broncos has been arrested after a confrontation with a police officer, correspondent Gethin Coolbaugh reports.
An assistant coach for the Denver Broncos is facing a felony assault charge after being accused of punching a police officer in the face at the Denver International Airport. Outside linebackers coach Michael Wilhoit was arrested on suspicion of second-degree assault on a police officer and booked into the Denver jail, according to jail records. A judge set a $5,000 bond on Monday. The 38-year-old Wilhoit joined the Broncos coaching staff in 2023 after previously working for head coach Sean Payton in New Orleans.
I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
Don't let the name fool you. Russian cyber attackers who call themselves Cozy Bear have found a unique way to gain your trust and hack your Microsoft account. Here's Chuck Palm with that in today's Tech News.
According to an article from the cybersecurity company KnowBe4, several Russian threat actors, including Russian hacking group Cozy Bear, are launching highly targeted spear phishing attacks against Microsoft 365 accounts. These sophisticated cyber attacks are coming from people impersonating employees at the U.S. State Department, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, or the European Union Parliament. They use a technique called a device code authentication, which tricks a user into giving them the code that gives them access to their accounts. Then the login provides access to their Microsoft accounts and lets them hack your systems. KnowBe4 mentioned that this method is much more effective at successfully compromising accounts than most other targeted spear phishing campaigns. Once the attackers gain your trust, they initiate conversations in target emails or messaging apps and then send a link that opens up a Teams meeting or another chat room. If you suspect a bad actor, hang up and call tech support yourself. Find me on X at Chuck Palm.
America in the Morning's Robert Workman has a check of Wednesday sports.
Make it 8 straight wins for the streaking Cavaliers. The NBA's best crushed the Magic 122-82 last night. Celtics have won 6 in a row after ripping the Raptors 111-101. Jason Tatum.
Picked up the intensity, we matched it. Took control of the game. I mean, they scrappy team. They play hard.
Lakers licked the Mavericks 107-99. Luka Doncic with a triple-double in his first game against his old team. Grizzlies won a wild one over the Suns, 151-148 in overtime. Victories for the Rockets, Warriors, and Pelicans. WNBA superstar Diana Taurasi announced her retirement after 20 seasons. She's the leading scorer in league history by nearly 3,000 points, won 3 league titles, and was voted by fans as the best player in WNBA history. Add in 3 college titles at Connecticut and 6 Olympic gold medals, and that is some legacy. College basketball last night, top 10 wins for number 2 Duke, 5th-ranked Tennessee, and number 6 Alabama, while number 3 Florida and number 9 Iowa State both lost on the road. NHL, the Flames burned the Capitals 3-1. Alex Ovechkin, though, scored his 883rd career goal. That puts him 11 behind Wayne Gretzky's record and gives the Great Eight his 19th 30-goal season. Panthers pounced on the Predators 4-1. Sam Bennett with the Gordie Howe hat trick. A goal, an assist, and a fight. Lightning zapped the Oilers 4-1 for their 6th win in a row. Maple Leafs rallied from down 3-0 to shade the Bruins 5-4 in overtime. Sabres were down 2-0 in the third before downing the Ducks 3-2. Canadians blanked the Hurricanes, 20 saves for Sam Montembeault, and wins for the Flyers, Blue Jackets, Rangers, Blues, Red Wings, and Utah. That's Wednesday Sports.
Thank you, Robert. The Jetsons, not so mythical, when America in the Morning continues after these messages. America in the Morning. After the success of Suits on TV and Netflix, the premiere of the spin-off Suits LA was streamed to mixed reviews. Kevin Carr has that story.
The spin-off of one of the biggest streaming hits landed with a thud on Sunday night. Back in the summer of 2023, the USA Network series Suits hit Netflix, and it became an overnight sensation, even though it hadn't been on the air for about 4 years. It was the highest streaming series of the year by a mile, with close to 60 billion minutes watched. It broke streaming records held by both Bluey and The Office, and it spent more than a dozen weeks at the top of Nielsen's streaming charts. Naturally, NBC developed a spin-off called Suits LA, which had its premiere on Sunday. The new series features a former prosecutor who runs an entertainment law firm.
Dylan, I took on the worst mobs in New York. I beat all of them, and I did it without batting an eye. If I can do that to them, imagine what I can do for you.
However, he's keeping a big secret.
But I know the real reason you left New York. And if you sue, the whole thing comes out.
2.6 million viewers tuned in for the premiere, losing the time slot to CBS's Watson. Suits LA ranked third out of 4 new drama series on NBC. It's possible the series hasn't captured the streaming fans, as Suits LA airs on NBC and streams exclusively on Peacock. The original series also has a very different, more whimsical hook.
Unfortunately, we only hire from Harvard. And you not only did not go to Harvard Law School, you haven't even gone to any law school.
Or maybe Suits LA just has to bank 9 seasons, then show up on Netflix. I'm Kevin Carr.
Well, if you remember the 1960s cartoon, The Jetsons, it was a futuristic look into a family that had a robot maid. The main character, George Jetson, would go to work in his flying car. Well, as correspondent Haya Panjwani reports for one company in California, that space-age flying future might not be too far off.
The company, Aleph Aeronautics, has been working on its flying car prototype for more than 3 years. Its first test flight along the California coastline managed to lift off the ground in a field, fly for about 40 seconds, hover over an SUV, and then land and continue driving for a little while. Aleph founder and CEO Jim Duchovny said, "It looks just like it sounds. Futuristic."
For people who see it for the first time, it's like first you see it in kind of science fiction movies, you read about it, and now you actually see it in person. So that's a wow effect. For us, because again, we've been doing it for 10 years, flying for 3, but like the company exists for 10 years, it's a very gradual and slow process.
Duchovny says people could be seeing more of these cars pretty soon.
If everything goes right, if we have all the resources which we need, which we have right now. If nothing changes, we plan to start the production of the first one by the end of 25 or beginning 26.
He also says there are already more than 3,000 pre-orders. I'm Haya Panjwani.
That's our show for today, Wednesday, February 26, 2025. America in the Morning is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.